Hi there, and welcome to Enterprise Software Defenders, a show that highlights how enterprise security leaders are using innovative technologies to stop the most sophisticated cyber attacks. In each episode, Fortune 500 CISOs share how the threat landscape has changed due to the cloud, real-world examples of modern attacks, and the role AI can play in the future of cybersecurity. I'm Evan Reiser, the CEO and founder of Abnormal Security.
And I'm Mike Britton, the CISO of Abnormal Security. Today on the show, we're bringing you a conversation with Mark Ferguson, Chief Information Security Officer at Bombardier. Bombardier is a Canadian multinational aircraft company best known for their production of premium business jets. They have over 17,000 employees and more than $8 billion of annual revenue. In this conversation, Mark shares insights into the impressive scale of Bombardier, the complexities of cybersecurity in the aviation industry, and the role of AI in enhancing security operations.
All right. Well, maybe Mark, to kick us off, do you want to share maybe a little bit about kind of your career journey up to this point and kind of how you arrived where you are today?
Sure. So, been around now for a number of years. So when I look back at my resume and count up the number of years, it's hard to believe it's like it's more than 30 years now since I started my career. I started out as an IT guy back in the early 90s. Left university, went to work for the local city. This was back in Scotland, so you probably tell from my accent I'm not native to North America or Canada, where I am now. But I started there, and I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years into that role. We had a restructuring in the city and the government, and long story short, they put two teams together, and part of this they said, so you go and shadow these guys for a day and they'll shadow you for a day. Well, when I shadowed the guy I was with, he looked after the schools. So we got the first job, came in that day, and I said, okay, what is it? He said, oh, we're going to Morgan Academy. And I was like, well, fantastic, because that was my school. I said, great, I get to go back to my school. And I said, what exactly is the work? He said, well, some kid's been sick in the keyboard, so we've got to go and clean the keyboard. And another kid's been sick and it's jammed the mouse ball. And so I thought, at that point, well, maybe it's time to start thinking about another career. So anyway, I begun to get certified. It was NetWare back in the day. Went through various roles in IT. Until I was working for a company in the UK, life safety company, and we were getting acquired by an American company, Honeywell. And as part of that led to another career switch for me, because I was beginning to think the challenges of IT were beginning to change. You could see the runway ahead was getting more challenging, and cybersecurity was just becoming a thing. Back then, this would be about 20 years ago, maybe a little bit less. So I made the switch at that point, about 15, 20 years ago, into cybersecurity. Basically cut my cybersecurity teeth at Honeywell, where through various job changes, I worked up to the position of CISO, which I held until 2019, where I was working for Honeywell in New Jersey, in the US, and then I moved to Bombardier at that point about five years ago, which involved another switch back to Europe. So we went back and we landed in Poland, of all places, which was a great experience. Growing up, I never ever thought I would end up in Poland, but that's where we ended. And sadly, that was only for about a year. We were in Poland before we came back to North America, which is where I am now, located in Ontario, and now working for Bombardier. So that's hopefully a potted history of my career.
And maybe for our audience that might not be familiar with Bombardier, can you just share a little about what the company does? Yeah,
so Bombardier makes basically the premier best business aircraft. We're a pure play business aircraft manufacturer, which means we basically design, develop, build, and sell business aircraft. So Think of it as private jets, basically. That's what we build, and we're number 1 and 2 in the market. We compete mainly in the medium and large sized market. Like I say, we're predominantly number 1 and 2 in both those markets.
And can you share a little more context about just like the scope and scale of the organization? I'd love to hear. It's quite a, it's a probably more complex business and operation than I think people would expect, right? Despite the sophistication of modern aircraft. But maybe you could also share a little bit about, what are some of the, cybersecurity challenges that are unique to the organization that maybe some of your peers might not fully appreciate?
Yeah. So on the one hand, we're quite a simple business, right? We only make one product, it's business jets. Now we've got several lines, and within each line you've got several business jets, but that's our business. Design, building, selling business jets. So to that extent, it's quite simple. However, when you get into that, the whole process of how you design, build, and sell an aircraft, that starts to bring the complexity into it. So we're, I think at the last count, we're about 18,000 employees, and then we're probably, 7,000 to 8,000 various contractors and partners that support us. So we're not massive compared to some companies, but we've got enough scale that it's we're big enough, and we've got the complexity which brings some of those IT and cybersecurity challenges to us. So, if I was saying in terms of those challenges, I mean, what I'm seeing and what's causes me most stress right now, it's probably a variation on 3 themes. So one is the suppliers, the dependence on suppliers. We've got so many suppliers, particularly on the IT side. From a cyber perspective, I've got to rely on these suppliers getting everything right every single time. Layer on top of that, areas, we're expanding and rapidly moving into cloud, and again, depending on those suppliers to get it right every single time. And then the other piece is the IT environment. I just find IT is so complex. And particularly in this industry, aviation, because there's a long tail to our product, we've got to be able to support a product for 25 years or greater, which means a lot of the IT systems that were part of that initial build have got to exist. So that brings with it a complexity that comes with a lot of, what I would say is legacy systems that just makes the job of securing these environments a lot harder. So it's not the suppliers and supply chain, the move into cloud, and then the complexity of IT. These are the 3 areas which cause me most concern.
So Mark, maybe just a quick follow-up question there. My guess is like when you first started, right? Almost 5 years ago, it was probably a simpler kind of. It was a somewhat simpler security environment, at least, where it was probably more. You probably had more people, right, in an office that were on company managed devices on a company managed network. Today, I have to imagine you at least have an increased number of people working outside kind of the corporate boundary, right, on their own devices. They can access IT systems from any network, any geography, right, any device. And so that kind of the boundaries changed a little bit, it's changed a lot. How has that affected kind of, how you think about security, right, as the perimeter gets increasingly, fuzzy?
Yeah, so I mean, we've gone through our challenges there as well, and we're still working some of them. I mean, even right now, this week, we've got changes going on that are basically reversing a lot of the decisions we made during that COVID era when everybody, fled from the offices, started working at home. We got everybody enabled so we can keep the business running. But a lot of those systems and changes you put in place, right, it takes a long time to reverse them, because people like being able to come to work with their personal mobile phone and connect to the network and get their email. So, slowly we've reversed that. Same with PCs. People like to be able to connect up to the web apps, their Office 365 web apps, and browse their email and download files. Well, again, we're having to go back and reverse that. So yeah, the perimeter, as we knew, I mean, it's there is no perimeter now, right? The perimeter is where the person is. So we're slowly going through the different use cases to begin to either get the control back or reverse it, or get it into a state that we're at least confident that we've minimized, reduced the risk.
Expectations are at all-time highs, right, for AI, and like it's certainly in some areas at the point of absurdity. Although there are some kind of tangible examples, and I agree with you, right? I think they're happening in places where there's like a very specific use case where that technology just coincidentally helps do that use case better, right? But it's more like who cares what the technology is? It seems to be working, and like that's valuable. There are some. I think all of us have played with ChatGPT, right, or Copilot, or any of these large language models. Yeah, I think a lot of the hopes and dreams are probably overestimated, although I'm bullish very long term. I think it's undeniable, though, that some of these tools will be used by bad guys, right? If nothing else, it's easy for anyone to write an email in perfect English, right, with some organizational context that might not otherwise have. And so, yeah, like how do you think criminals will take advantage of that, right? And like, it's not gonna, I don't think we're gonna have like the AI, I don't think we're gonna have like the apocalyptic sci-fi AI attacks, but like presumably like like you said in your Copilot example, AI can be used to augment, right, humans, right? And there is some benefits there. What are the risks that you think, you and your peers should be thinking about, right, as we go into a world where criminals are at least augmented, if not supercharged with AI technology?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're right that those same things I spoke about, how AI is enabling us to crunch through data a lot quicker, to get to answers a lot sooner, right? I mean, criminals are going to just they're going to use that same capability, whether it's to find vulnerabilities in software, or to write better phishing emails, or to create deep fakes, which I expect will be the next iteration of, the current phishing email tactic will eventually move on to deep fake emails and videos and voice calls. I know it's already happening in some cases, but they're going to take that and leverage it against us. But again, that's why I'm excited to partner with companies like Abnormal, because I assume or hope that within Abnormal's development, they're starting to look at how are we going to be ready for that next iteration of what comes after phishing emails, which they've done a great job at helping us get that problem under control. The next challenge will be this next phase of tools and capabilities that the cyber criminals acquire, leveraging AI. How are companies like Microsoft, Abnormal going to be able to help organizations like ours to stay ahead of that and to be able to combat those threats?
I think probably like the marketing fear around how bad AI is right now for criminals is exaggerated, right? Right. There probably are a couple examples, right, that are indicative of like what the future is going to look like from a threat perspective. Are there any specific things you've seen, right, or heard about maybe from your peers, right, of criminals using these technologies that even though it might be kind of a small number of things today, you feel like are representative for the types of things we have to be prepared for in the future?
So within my community, no, we haven't seen anything firm yet. I would say the biggest challenge we've seen is people with the best intentions doing the wrong thing, right? For example, uploading confidential data to ChatGPT to tell ChatGPT to go analyze it and come back with some insight. That right now, I would say, is probably the biggest issue for most organizations, is how do you control your employees and make sure they're managing that information and the data that they've got and not sharing it. Any public Gen AI, ChatGPT type environment where that data is going to be retained for future use, right, and it's potentially going to come back and be replayed or reused or useful to somebody else that might either stumble on or query for that information. So I think the employees more than the criminals right now are the biggest challenge for us.
Yeah, I think what you said to what you said there, like, is almost undeniably true, right? It's, people's good intentions are causing a lot of risk, And also, I see a lot of criminals taking advantage of people's good intentions, right? I mean, most of social engineering is some flavor of that. And I think the most sophisticated criminals are using, kind of our own people and our own IT systems against us, right? It's way easier now to, trick someone and log in to a corporate system, right? Versus break through the firewall or hack a satellite, right? That's not it doesn't seem to be happening these days.
Yeah, and the cyber criminal, and I'm separating them from the the nation states that have got different motivations and are resourced differently. But your cyber criminal, their work is, it's all about volume, right? So it's keeping the cost as low as possible and spreading the threat to the biggest volume possible, and that's where AI will help them, right? Because it's going to enable them to I guess widen the net for the potential targets they can go after and reduce that cost to launch whatever attack it is they're after. So I think that's where they'll be able to take advantage of Gen AI and other AI models.
Mark, you and your team have been very kind of forward thinking and kind of exploring these new technologies, right? And trying to figure out, how you can, take advantage of like what actually works without succumbing to some of the hype and maybe kind of wasted energy. I know we're still in the very early days of how these technologies can improve, security, but are there any examples where you've seen any of your team's kind of usage of AI, help do something that maybe couldn't have been done in the past? And even though it might be very small, it kind of gives you hope that like, hey, like this type of thing, 5 years from now, we could be doing 10x more of that, right? That just makes you bullish about the long term. Or any other kind of examples you can share about, where you feel like, hey, where you've seen some promise.
Yeah. So we had a situation maybe 4 weeks ago where we saw an anomaly in the environment. We had. I want to say it was I seem to recall it was an impossible traveler situation that got flagged up, and we were trying to find out what's going on here. Has something changed in the environment which caused this to get flagged up? And we couldn't figure out. And the team looked at it and they were looking at the various bits of telemetry we've gotten. The different Microsoft sources we've got to try and piece together the structure and the story of what was going on, and it was taking a while. And then one of the guys said, "Look, let's feed it into Copilot and let's see what it does." And it came back within seconds and said, this change happened by this person to this endpoint on this date, and they were able to just narrow in on what the change was, who made the change. Now, it was coming back. It was, as I recall, it was, the data that came back, it didn't tell us the person specifically, but we got the, details of the, I think it was the endpoint that came back. Well, the long story short, we were able to quickly get to who did what a lot quicker than just going through screens and screens and screens of different event data, login data, and hopefully, stumbling across it through Copilot, we were able to get to it much, much quicker. So that's just one success story. So far, we haven't had anything major since then, but we're continuing to look at it. And there's promise there. So we're kind of optimistic that over time we're going to get the benefits of that, because like I say, that's always been the big challenge for me, is taking all this great data you get from people like Microsoft and then turning it into something meaningful.
Yeah, and you have to imagine that just gets increasingly hard in the future when you have more enterprise applications. Each of them are creating more sets of data, right? You have exponential data growth. The attacks are getting more sophisticated, and presumably most teams aren't going to have exponential growth of their headcount, right? And so at some point you have to reconcile that. We need every person to be able to effectively analyze more data. It's hard to imagine how that works without technology, whether it's data science or machine learning, AI, or whatever the next thing is, right? Like there's got to be some technology there to increase our productivity and understand that data.
Yeah, we're testing one, or rather I gave the challenge to one of our IT teams, because what we're trying to take a look at now is So if you look at our cloud usage, like, how do I know what's risky and what's important, right? So I asked the team, I said, give me a report of all the SaaS usage we've got going on today, and the report came back, and it was, well, we're using 11,000 services. I was like, oh, well, okay. So that's like, okay, so how do I get from 11,000 to, like, let's say the top 50 most critical? It's almost impossible, right? Because then it depends. Well, what do you consider critical? Different services, people are sharing different data. Others have got different business uses. So it's almost impossible to get from 11,000 to what you would consider to be the core things that are going to represent the biggest threat to your organization. So I thought I would turn it over to the AI guys and said, hey, can you guys can you take a look at this, and I don't know if you can do some magic in your with your data scientists and through your AI skills, and how do we get insights from this data that we can then turn back to the organization and say, look, this is how we're using SaaS. This is the type of data we're uploading. This is the numbers. This is the volumes. These are the, whether it's 50 or 100 or 10 that we've got to focus on and keep tracking. So we'll see if AI or the data scientists can help us with that one. Hopefully they can.
Well, Mark, I know we have a couple minutes left. We like to enter episodes with a bit of a lightning round. So maybe go through a couple questions, and we'd love to get your kind of like one tweet answer. These questions are very difficult to answer in one tweet, so please forgive me in advance, and hopefully, So let me kind of kick a couple off, right? So I got I think 4, right? So one is, what advice would you give to a security leader that maybe just stepped in their first CISO job about what they might kind of underestimate or overestimate about the role?
Listen to your business. Know your business. So I think listening and knowing and learning what the business does, and ultimately why you're there, right? Because if you do those 3 things, you'll learn why you're there and why they need you there.
And one of the things I've just been impressed with kind of you and your team is, you guys are surprisingly up to date on like the latest developments and technologies. What advice would you have for maybe some of your peers that are trying to stay up to date with the latest innovations in AI or the threat landscape?
Tough question, because it seems, and maybe I'm wrong here, but it seems self-evident that anybody that works in cybersecurity has got to stay ahead of the technology, right? I mean, in this role, you got to juggle a lot of hats. You got to be able to navigate organizations. I mentioned you got to be able to know your business. You got to be able to know the business leaders and what motivates them, and so on. But also, I think people overlook the importance of understanding the technology, and I do think you've got to know enough that when you're sat in a room and you're being asked to make a decision, you can look at whether it's an architect or a developer or a supplier, and you understand enough that you can make that right decision, right? And that basically what you're being told passes the sniff test. I'm trying to be polite in how I word it, but you got to be able to cut through the BS, and that means you got to be able to know and be able to go in and talk credibly, whether it's business, organization, technology, innovation. You got to learn all these skills.
That makes sense to me. Maybe switching gears to the more personal side, what's a book you've read that's had a big impact on your leadership?
The one that was probably recently most inspiring was a guy called Jan Ullrich, who was a German cyclist, and he was Lance Armstrong's. What would you say? He was the bridesmaid to Lance Armstrong's bride. He was like second in the Tour de France every time Lance Armstrong won it. But reading his story and how, again, he had a lot of personal issues on the back of that era of doping and cycling. And seeing how he worked through that and how he came back from it, I think it's always inspiring when you see somebody that they look like they've lost everything, but somehow they they navigate a path back to something approaching happiness and fulfillment. And so that was probably the most recent example of that I've read.
What do you believe is going to be true about AI's future impact on cybersecurity that most people would consider science fiction? So looking for your kind of contrarian view that, where you have a different opinion than maybe the average person.
Well, I mean, I think if it delivers on its, what is it they talk about it becoming a sentient being? If it does deliver on that, and I got to think one day it will, right? I mean, it's inevitable that just through, if you look at the history of humans and how we innovate and develop and how quickly things move, and then, that curve is just getting quicker and quicker and quicker. I think eventually true intelligence will be delivered. I don't know when it's going to be, but when it does, I think some of these things, if we haven't figured out how to control it, I think in some cases it will control us. Maybe not as the entire population or so, but I think in some cases it might control us, right? Or it will unwittingly trigger a series of events that weren't anticipated, right? It's the unintended consequences, which I think is what will come true. I guess none of us know what those unintended consequences are. That's why they're unintended. But I think it's inevitable that will come true in some shape or form, right? I mean, there's no doubt.
What would be your kind of like one tweet answer to, what advice do you want to share for the next generation of security leaders?
I would say, and take this the right way, careful what you wish for, right? So, this role, the CISO role, it's always developing, it's always changing, but I think any leader coming into it should take the time to learn the different skills that you're going to need to be successful in the role. And there's a lot, right? You got to be able to deal with legal, you got to be able to deal with data protection, HR, finance. There's a lot of business acumen you got to acquire to be successful if you're going to sit in front of these people and build a relationship, be credible, speak and be heard with confidence, and a lot of that comes down with taking the time to engage with the business, learn the business, and like I said earlier, listen to what they're saying, because when you listen, you'll hear what's important to them, and then when you know what's important to the business and what their strategy is, you can then define, well, how am I going to bring the value I bring, which is helping them do business securely, to this equation. So, know your business and listen to them, and that's probably the best piece of advice I'd give to somebody coming into it. And don't expect an easy ride either. I mean, this is I don't know, I've been doing this now for 8 years, a little bit longer, here in at Honeywell, and new stuff comes up every day, every week, and it's like, just when you think you've got all the answers, you realize, it's like, never had that question before. I'm going to have to go figure that one out and get back to you. So yeah, always be ready for that next question that you hadn't anticipated, and just be open to what that answer might need to be.
Well, I think a lot of people will, that will resonate with a lot of people, and I think wise advice. Well, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Great to chat with you, and looking forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks, Evan. Take care.
That was Mark Ferguson, Chief Information Security Officer at Bombardier. I'm Mike Britton, the CISO of Abnormal Security.
And I'm Evan Reiser, the CEO and founder of Abnormal Security.
Please be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find more great lessons from technology leaders and other enterprise software experts at enterprisesoftware.blog.
This show is produced by Josh Muir. See you next time.